帝国はとても強い。戦艦はとてもでかい。ダース・ベイダーは黒い。トルーパは白い。デスターは丸い。Something like that. That's close enough. And that was taught to me by a friend of mine named Shibuya when I worked for Tsuburaya Productions. It's the Japanese lyrics for the Imperial Death March from Star Wars. And it means something like the Empire is really strong, the war is really big, Darth Vader is black, the stormtroopers are white, and the Death Star is round. So now you know there are Japanese lyrics to the Imperial Death March. So yesterday I watched The Empire Strikes Back as part of my Zen Movies series. As I mentioned last time, there are a lot of scientists who go on YouTube and sort of do science commentary about science fiction movies, and I thought I would do Zen commentary on movies that are supposedly Zen. So, Star Wars is one of those that is often cited as being a Zen movie or a series of Zen movies. In fact, my first Zen teacher, he was an American guy, and his mother was a born-again Christian, and she blamed Star Wars for turning an entire generation of Americans to the dark side, to Eastern religions. And when I first heard that, I was kind of like, what are you talking about? Because I, personally, at whatever age I was when I heard this, I'd never noticed anything Eastern religion-y at all about Star Wars. It shows you how dense I am. But a lot of people have commented about it through the years, and in fact, a guy I know named Matthew Bortolini wrote a book called The Dharma of Star Wars, which is actually pretty good, and goes into various ways that Star Wars is related to Buddhism. But having watched Empire Strikes Back yesterday, here are my personal thoughts on it. Number one, you already heard the theme song. The other thing that I heard a lot when I was in Japan was that the name Jedi came from Jidai. Movies about the past, like samurai and those kind of films, the Kurosawa films like Seven Samurai and Hidden Fortress and those things, are called Jidaigeki, which means basically period films. And the story goes that George Lucas had heard Jedi and changed it to Jedi. There are other stories. There's a story that there's a Tibetan word that sounds like Yoda, from which Yoda got his name, and other things like that. But the main character who is cited as being the Zen master in Star Wars is, of course, our friend Mr. Yoda. He is. He is called Yoda. No, Yoda he is called. Green he is. Puppet he is. Voice of Miss Piggy he has. That's the guy that's often cited as the Zen master. So is Yoda a Zen master? My vote after watching the movie is no. He's but maybe some of these things come from Zen. I'm looking at my notes I took last night. A couple of things he says. I mean, there's a little bit of a mindfulness thing. One of his quotes is, "Never his mind on where he was," when Yoda is criticizing Luke Skywalker. "Never use force for attack," or "force for attack never use." I don't know how he says it, but that's sometimes those things are cited as Zen sayings. It's more of a martial arts thing. You know, the martial arts are not supposed to be used for attack. The story I heard, which I'm not an expert on martial arts history, but the story I heard about the development of karate and kung fu in the martial arts was that Buddhist monks had a vow of nonviolence, but they were getting robbed all the time and getting killed even. So they developed a set of techniques to fight back without using violence, while keeping their vow of nonviolence. They would protect themselves, and hence karate was born, which means empty hand. Karate. Kara is empty and te is hand. So don't say you didn't learn anything from this video. Another thing Yoda says is, unlearn what you have learned you must. You know, also a little Zenish, minorly. Here's one that comes out and is often cited as a Zen saying, but is totally not. Luminous beings we are, not this crude matter. So This idea of the Force presupposes that our real nature is luminous beings, and not this crude matter, which is not Zen philosophy. The Zen philosophy has it that the crude matter and the luminous being part of our nature are two sides of one undivided thing that is neither crude matter nor luminous being. So to deny crude matter and emphasize luminous being would be a mistake, rather than a kind of a step towards real understanding, which is how Yoda presents it. But Yoda is sort of based on this idea of the Zen master or the martial arts master, who sort of appears to be a befuddled old fool, but reveals himself to be the genius who can fix everything. So that, in that sense, it goes back to that, and that's a trope probably that George Lucas borrowed from Japanese films and Japanese entertainment, or possibly even the old Kung Fu TV series, which itself borrowed it from Japanese films and Chinese films and things like that. So there is that rough connection there, but not a very strong connection. It's just sort of his character traits are mirrored on that. And there's something I learned while researching for this video that I had not known. There are a lot of stories about who Yoda was based on. I heard various stories from Zen people, all unsubstantiated. One was that Lucas had hung around the San Francisco Zen Center, which sort of makes sense because he's based up there in the Bay Area, and had met Shunryu Suzuki, author of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and based Yoda on him. Another story I heard was that George Lucas hung around L.A., which, of course, being a film person, he would have, and ran into Joshu Sasaki Roshi, who used to run Rinzai-ji in Los Angeles and also the Mount Baldy Zen Center on Mount Baldy, and based Yoda on him. A third story that comes out on the internet that I just found out today is that Yoda was based on a certain Tibetan master. This Tibetan master was named Zenkong Tsurab Rinpoche. I think I'm getting that right. If not, apologies. And there are some pictures of pictures of him and side by side, and the story goes, I'll just read this to you. Zenhab Surkong Rinpoche was a massive man, a monk with a shaved head, red robes, and a deeply lined face that made him look more ancient than his years. His humble, wise manner and gentle humor made him appear like the archetypal sage of fables. This quality did not escape the notice of Westerners who met him. Upon seeing him in Dharmasala, for instance, the makers of the popular film Star Wars decided to use him as the model for Yoda, the spiritual guide of the epic. Rinpoche never saw the movie, but would undoubtedly have been amused at the caricature. That story, if you look at the pictures, maybe it sounds good, but it has this kind of ring of bullshit to me, because the makers of the film Star Wars, so the person who's telling the story doesn't even know who made Star Wars, happened to hang around in Dharmasala. I've never seen any evidence that they went to Dharmasala. So the idea that he was inspired by this particular guy, I don't know. I don't really believe any of it. My guess is he's just a conglomeration of basic filmatic tropes of the old wise martial arts / Zen master. So is Empire Strikes Back a Zen movie? Probably not. If you want my personal opinion on the matter, it's a fun movie though. I hadn't seen it for a while, so that was good. And we had crepes and popcorn, both made by Dave at the center. We all sat around at the center, the Angel City Zen Center, watching this film, and it was a fun movie, but not really much of a Zen movie. So all my donation info, Patreon, and the PayPal and all that are below. Donate to those. That's how I make my living. And thanks a lot. See you next time.